Let's take a look at a hypothetical example of the status report development. And before we do that, let's make sure we're clear on what we'll assume while we do this. We're going to assume that each cost account has only one work package, and that each cost account will be represented as an activity in the network. Again, that's standard operating procedure, but some companies don't necessarily do it that way, which will affect how you calculate this. But if you want to do this correctly, you want to make sure that you've got direct linkages between cost accounts and particular activities. We'll also assume that the project network early times will serve as the basis for assigning the baseline values. That also is something very typical. And then from the moment work begins on activity, some actual costs will be incurred each period until the activity is completed. So those are our assumptions. Here's the example we're going to work through. And here's our work breakdown structure with our cost accounts overlaid with our organizational breakdown structure. If you're working on the case for this week, this would be a good example of how to represent the particular work that the scanner project has you doing, and trying to understand which departments within the scanner project are responsible for which activities. So you can kind of see this hybrid overlay. So straight up and down is your work breakdown structure, and across is your organizational breakdown structure. And so here we have specific tasks and costs associated with those tasks. We can see that the assembly is broken up into two cost accounts. One's assemble, one's test, but both of those tasks will be done by the assembly department. And then there's individual tasks associated with the Zoom department, the storage department, the shell department, and the design department. And specifically those tasks are the Zoom system, the memory software, the shell and power work, and the design specs. Here's our baseline Gantt chart and showing where we expect the work to actually occur, and then we're going to overlay what our planned values and our planned baseline is for this project next. In this slide you can see the baseline budget for this project. Let's take a look at what's going on here, and in some respects this baseline budget looks a lot like a Gantt chart in first looking. So let's see what we got here. For activity A, the total planned value is $20,000 deployed evenly over the first and second day of the duration of that activity. Going down the list, activity B is $15,000, and that one's not linear. We're going to spend $5,000 the first time unit and $10,000 the second time unit. So, and down the line you can see that the total planned value for any particular activity is shown in that total PV column, but we'll be using the planned value to date when we actually calculate any of the variances off of the planned value. So you can see that we've got total planned value by period in the lower part of the screen, and then you can see your cumulative totals as well. The total budget for the project is $320,000, which is represented by that final number in the lower right hand corner of the chart. You should be able to get the same number by adding up the total PV for all the individual activities. That data is not shown there, but just for your own exercise you might want to total up the planned values to see that those also equal $320,000. Here's where I'm going to recommend that you for sure watch the Larson videos that go through this in a little more detail, and so you can visually see where the numbers are. But as I go through this in the next slide, open your book to page 465 so you can see the baseline budget. I'll be referring back to that as we go along and take a look at what's going on here. So we're going to just run this through every single reporting period. No sense in doing this on most projects. In fact, you'll probably want to not even begin setting up the first report until you're at least 20% done with the project, because there's early on in the project there's a lot more variances than hopefully later on. But the rule of thumb is probably 20% of the project in before the first status report. But that being said, let's take a look at what happens after period 1. The percent complete is something that's either using earned value rules or using visual indication in the field or reports from the field. But one way or another you're given information about how that activity is going along, the actual work being done. So from that work percent complete, we can calculate the earned value, which is the percent complete times the total planned value for the activity. For activity A, the total planned value is shown on page 465 was $20,000. 50% of that is $10,000, so the earned value is $10,000. The actual cost is something that's going to be reported into the accounting financial reporting system. People that bill to the project, if you have individual labor, outside contractors, so that cost account that's associated with task A would get billed to, and so you would get that report independently. And that leaves us with planned value. Well, the planned value is simple. Look at the Gantt chart. Look at the baseline budget. For period 1, the planned value for activity A is $10,000. So now we've got our 3 independent data points, and from that we can calculate the cost variance, earned value minus actual cost, and the schedule variance, earned value minus planned value. Let's skip period 2 for now. Let's take a look at period 3, and just so we can go into that in a little more detail. So by period 3, the plan was to have activity A completely done, and wouldn't you know, according to the status report, it's finished. Cost us a little more than we originally planned. Cost us $30,000, but we only planned $20,000. You'll notice that the earned value and the planned value are equal, and there's no schedule variance. That's usually an indication that that activity is completed. Not always, but usually, especially early on tasks. And that too is a tip as we're working on the scanner project. Additional things to look at here is reports in the field show the percent complete done for the various tasks. We're going to assign the earned value is based on that percent complete times the planned value for those activities. So that's where those numbers under the earned value column come from. Again, actual costs are reported in your accounting system, and then the planned value is just pulled off the Gantt chart. And through period 3, the planned value on B was $5,000. The planned value for C was $20,000, and the planned value for D was $15,000. Again, take a look at page 465. Here's some more data through periods 4 and 5, and for your own information, make sure you can understand where all these numbers come from. I highly recommend you watch the Larson videos for the Chapter 13 problem example. It will give you a really good sense on how the baseline budget, the Gantt chart, and these financial reports all come together into your project control system. And one more time, periods 6 and 7 reported here. And you can see that in the cumulative totals, and let's go ahead and look at the last period that we're reporting, which is period 7, which is a good portion of the way into the project. By that point, we have a cost variance of $70,000, meaning that our project's in the hole a bit. And we have a schedule variance of $40,000, which is an indication that the project is behind, but we'd have to take a look at the Gantt chart and see which activities are behind. It shows that activity C and activity E's are behind. And if you compare that to the baseline Gantt chart, both of those are on the critical path, and therefore it's an indication that this project, if everything continues on the same trend, this project will not be completed on time.